Everybody needs an assistant. Everybody needs a right-hand man. And the more important you become as a right-hand man, the more essential you are to the project. When I was young, it's all I could think of was wanting to be in the music business and focused on a songwriter, musician, singer, whatever. But I gotta get in. That's the question I get now all the time from people when I meet them. How do I get in? How do I get in? How do I get in? And so many people that are successful will answer that question as saying, I don't know, it's just difficult and it's a hard road and blah, 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 blah. But what I thought about is there's so many aspects of being a film composer that open up a bunch of doors in a bunch of different jobs that are all related. And when I'm recording, for instance, if I'm recording a score down at Warner Brothers and I've got a full orchestra sitting there, I'm not the only person in the control room. It's a group. And within that group are all these people that are special at doing these certain jobs. Now, all of them may be composers. All of them may be great musicians. But what they're bringing that day is a certain part of the whole pie. And it's really important, and it's really important that they each fulfill that particular spot. So what are those positions, and what are those spots, and how do you get into one of those spots? And most importantly, what if one of those spots isn't really what you want to do? Well, it might be a great stepping stone to where you want to go. Music editor. So I'm sitting in the control room and I've got the orchestra recording, I've got directors and producers of the movie, I've got people everywhere, right? Who's sitting with me? My music editor's there. My music editor, what does he do? First thing he does generally is to tempt the movie with music from different movies to satisfy the director and kind of show a direction of where the film is going to go musically. This could be even before they even hire a composer. But that job as a music editor is a very, very creative job. It's not a pencil pushing job. It's a creative job. You have to know lots of music. You have to know key changes. You have to understand or have a good ear. You have to know film scores inside out and composers and styles, and you have to be very aware of pop music. So it's a pretty encompassing job, and it's a great job. And it can lead to being a composer. It can also lead to being a very successful music editor and making a nice living. How does one become a music editor, and how do you get to do that as a profession and get paid? Well, be an assistant music editor. Find music editors. Go online, look up music editors. They're all over the place. Find out who they are. They need help. Everybody needs an assistant. Everybody needs a right-hand man. And the more important you become as a right-hand man, the more essential you are to the project. People that are very successful in the film business, in the film music business, have great assistants. Hans Zimmer. We can talk about his assistant because he used to work for me. Alan Silvestri. These guys all have great assistant guys that do all sorts of jobs. And they're very creative people. Orchestrator. Now, this is a very specialized job. It's a union job. So you are paid by the page. So if you do 10 pages, I guess that's like $650 generally. So that's how that works. But becoming a orchestrator, that would entail some schooling and education, because you really need to understand how an orchestra works, the ranges of instruments, writing for them. You basically are going to take files from a composer, from his sequence, his or her, and then you're going to take those files and you're going to work out what the orchestra is actually going to be looking at. Now this includes, and a lot of people don't realize this, page turning. Think about that. The page turn, if it's in the middle of a big, massive phrase, it's very difficult. So a good orchestrator will be aware of that and make it so that the page turn is not where the big run is. Also, writing for the harp is quite complicated, and knowing the harp and how the harp works and all the pedals, very important for orchestrators to know these things. So these are all aspects of the job that are really important, but the great thing about an orchestrator is a Marvel movie might use 10 orchestrators, and they all have work, and they get royalties. Number 3, recordist. So what's a recordist? It used to be called a tape op. It can be a tape op. But generally what the recordist is the guy that pushes record and records the session, whether it's orchestra or a band or a percussionist or whatever it might be, singer. But okay, so does he just push record? No. He's got to keep track of all the different tracks. He's working directly with the engineer, so they're in sync with each other, obviously, and also where things are being placed and what take you're doing. Because for instance, if I hear something great and I say, you know what, that thing I said was really cool like 4 takes ago or 3 takes ago or 2 takes ago, remember that? He's got to remember that. The recordist has to look at me and go, oh, you mean take number 5A, here it is, boom. I already cut it into the section. There's a guy named Larry Ma who does this, who's fantastic. I mean, does it before I ask him. And again, here's a job where I'm relying on him. And it's a very important job, and it's a great job, and it's a job working in music, and you have to have a musical ear, and you're being creative, and you can be creative with your cuts and your Pro Tools knowledge and all these different things that you can bring to the table. And it's another area of film composing that is very, very important to the project and the process. Becoming a recordist, becoming a recording engineer, these are all jobs within studios. So working at studios, sweeping up studios. Let's not forget John Bon Jovi swept studios, before he made it big, obviously. Doing whatever you can at a studio, grunt work they call it, can be difficult, but you learn the ropes, and engineers that are working in the studio eventually will say to you, hey, can you set up this stuff? Can you move this stuff here? Can you do that? And all of a sudden you're setting things up. Next thing, this engineer is showing you where the microphones go. Now you're starting to get knowledge about how to mic things, and you're getting it not from a book, but from an engineer doing it. So these are all really important aspects of it. And these are things that you can take with you and start to soak in and start to become very important to the studio so that they rely on you now. Well, we need so-and-so here because he's great and he sets everything up properly, and all of a sudden you become a very important cog in the wheel. And I think that's a really important aspect of getting into the music business, is becoming important to the process. Number 4, a composer's assistant. Years ago, I had an assistant, and he was going to leave me, and I was really bummed out he was going to leave because he was very good. But he said, I've got this friend of mine who's good. He's young, but he's really good. He'll come in. Well, I met with this guy, and I was not impressed. First of all, he was really young. He didn't say anything. And I just was worried about him being able to get into the complexities of my system at that time, which was pretty complex. However, that weekend, he tore my entire room apart. And by the following week, he had the entire thing back up and running and humming. And I kind of went, who is this kid? His name is Chuck Choi, and he is now Hans Zimmer's right-hand man. So how's he done in the business? Great. And he is an amazing person, but he carved out this amazing position. And every composer in LA in the world, needs that guy. They need that Chuck Choi, who can solve tons of problems, knows Pro Tools, knows technically what's going on, knows knowledge that the composer might not have, and is able to bring that into the situation and obviously make the composer's life easier, which is golden. So that's a great job. That's a good position for people to look at. So I've had so many people write to me and say, will you listen to my music? And they send me their music, or they will want me to comment. They want to show me something they've written. And I get it, because I did that. But you know what? If they wrote to me and said, if you need an assistant, I can do blah, 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 blah. That interests me, because most composers don't necessarily need someone that's a composer, although that can happen, of course. But generally, what you need is an assistant. And that means somebody that can do everything. Technically, engineering, composing, music editing, all those jobs. That's what a composer's assistant does. And the more of those jobs you do, the more important you become to the composer, and the more solid your job is with the composer. And these guys that have been with Alan Silvestri, I have a guy named Marlon Espino. He's been with me for almost 20 years because he's amazing. And those people are so important in the industry. And yet, I don't think that Marlon, when he was going to school or when he was young, was thinking, I'm going to be an assistant to a composer. I don't think that was his goal necessarily. He's a songwriter and a musician and all these different things. But he's bringing all those things to the table. So he gets to use all those skills and he's making a living. 5, we're going to talk about several jobs that are somewhat related. You know, you need a conductor. Now, a lot of composers conduct. Being a conductor is a great job, and there are great conductors. I use great conductors, and it's a wonderful position to hold, and it's a great career. It can be lucrative, but more importantly, it's very musical, extremely musical. So there's that, of course. Now, you also have a contractor, and the contractor is someone who has to put together the orchestra or put together the session. If I say, I need a great drummer, I need a great bass player, and I'm doing this kind of track, and I was going to use these guys, but they're busy. I don't know what to do. That's where the contractor steps in and goes, oh, have you used so-and-so on drum? No, I have never even heard of him. Oh, that job, contractor, it becomes very important to me. So that's another area that you can be in that's very musical, that deals with being creative, being aware of really good musicianship, and being able to deal with people and politics and all the other stuff that goes with it. Then you have a recording engineer, huge job, mixing, recording. Those are all, they can be all different guys, they can all be one guy. People are specialized in mixing, people are specialized in engineering, some people are specialized in both. But if you want to be a film composer, it isn't a bad thing to be an engineer, because you're going to use that. And who knows, maybe you become a great engineer. We don't know going into these things. The more open you are, and the more skills you have, you can see, the way I'm explaining it, you can see that the more skills you have, the more chance you have of getting in. If I go back and look at where I was, let's say when I was 25, I was playing in a bar, I was writing my own music, writing my own songs, I was scoring documentaries for nothing, just learning how to, actually back then I would just push play and record and the film at the same time to sync them. If you would have asked me, so Mark, you know, where do you see yourself in 10 years? I would have been like, well, I'm hoping I have a record deal, touring, making albums. But quite honestly, I'm so glad I had the career that I've had, because that career can be very temporary. Whereas doing film work and being good at it, you just can keep working. You become valuable because it's kind of a small area of a skill set. You have to be able to do film score. It's a kind of a thing. So it really helps to hone that in and be able to have that skill. But back then, I had lots of skills because I was looking, where's my way in? Songwriter? Session player? Composer? What am I? Well, I was all those things. And luckily for me, those things led to producing records. They led to working with Zimmer on early stuff like The Lion King. They led to having a skill set of knowing how to sync machines and work with films before we had syncing, before we could really sync to the film quite properly. So those were all things that I learned on the road up to where I got to.